Hello and welcome everybody to the big 10th episode of This Week in Hollywood. I am, of course, your host, Adam Robson, joined as always by Reese Wiegman.
Great to be here. Really feels good to get past that, double-digit marker.
Exactly. This is the 10th episode. Didn't really plan a huge extravaganza for it, unfortunately. I was also away on vacation for a majority of this week, so not too much on the list. But I promise maybe on the 11th episode or the 12th episode, we will be doing something big for all the movies coming out this month. But right off the bat, as a movie we've seen, a pretty big release, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny has come out.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Reese, have you seen this movie?
I have seen this movie. I went and saw it Friday, I believe, and I'm anxious to hear what you had to say about it, but I was pleasantly surprised.
Okay. Really quickly, though, because this is the fifth, what is your take on the rest of the movies? I recently bought and rewatched the original trilogy on 4K, so those are fresh in my mind. I have not seen Kingdom of the Crystal Skull since it came out originally, and then I think I've seen it one more time since. But what is your take on the Indiana Jones series?
I was a big Indiana Jones kid. Like whenever in the lead up coming up to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and there was like the Lego game came out, and they all had all these action figures were out. Like I was big into Indiana Jones. I remember reading like the novelizations of the books in school, really into it. And so I think I did a rewatch during the pandemic, like early 2020. I think Temple of Doom is my favorite.
Okay.
I would go to Raiders, Last Crusade. I really don't like Last Crusade, then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and then this fits in somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, before Dial of Destiny came out, I was straight down the list. I went 1, 2, 3, 4 in literally that order for my favorites. Original trilogy are all very highly rated. I enjoy Last Crusade more than a lot of people do. I think Sean Connery is actually pretty good in that, and I like the comedy
Great, yeah.
those two. But definitely not as good as those other two. I think Temple of Doom is extremely slept on. I like Temple of Doom a lot. And then obviously Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I actually think some of that movie works pretty well. It's when you get to the actual temple and the aliens and the jungle that I think it gets a little derailed and starts going off the deep end and is not very good in that aspect. But Dial of Destiny, I went in with an open mind. I was excited to see it. Saw my dad. He's a big Indiana Jones guy as well. I've got to say it's not terrible. I would put this above Kingdom of Crystal Skull. I wouldn't put it anywhere near the original trilogy.
Agreed.
But there, and this is honestly, and I want to hear what you have to think about this, but this is like the epitome of just baffling decisions. First of all, I think most of the action is okay, but goes on way too long. It's especially weird that there are two chase sequences in the middle of the movie, like back-to-back action sequences, which is really odd. And I felt like the story was nothing really that special. It was very much like flowing along. Indiana Jones would do this, and then he would go somewhere else, and then the bad guys would catch up. They do something, he'd go somewhere else, the bad guys would catch up, and it just kind of felt like the same thing over and over again almost.
Yeah, so what I really liked about it was with all of these sequels that are coming out to older franchises, which we're just getting inundated with lately, I liked how this movie did not have this like grandiose feeling of finality, and it didn't just play all the Indiana Jones hits. Like it kind of just like here's just like another Indiana Jones adventure. And so for that reason, it almost felt a little out of place. Because it's like, wait, why are we even getting this? But it was really refreshing to not have it be like the epic conclusion to the grand saga. It was like, yeah, Indiana Jones went and did this. And it was like, all right. Like, I think it was like a fine summer movie. It was fun.
Yeah, I would agree. But at the same time, it's extremely weird because Harrison Ford has come out and said this is his last one. So the fact that they didn't play up that finality of the saga is really weird, I thought. And yeah, and you know what? I'm going to put up on screen a skip ahead point because I do want to get into some of the spoilers with this. So if you have not seen this movie, plan on seeing it, go ahead and skip. But the ending, it felt so weird in my mind. Again, knowing this is the end, Harrison Ford is not coming back, that not only do they shoot him, which could have been a death, you let him bleed out, the saga ends there. And then they go back in time in possibly the most bizarre but fun scenes in the trilogy, I would say, definitely redeemed this movie. I loved this ending.
I
But
liked it
then
a lot.
he even wants to stay, and they don't just let him stay to end the series, and they bring him back. And of course, you get that Marion Ravenwood
Yep.
cameo. I
Yep.
personally thought, especially with a lot of movies bringing back these actors and these crossovers, I thought we were either going to get Mutt Williams, which they write out of this movie at the halfway point,
Yep.
or Ke Huy Quan was going to come back as Short Round. And I'm baffled that neither of them showed up.
Yeah, I thought about both those things going in, and I'm kind of glad neither happened. Not that I wouldn't have liked seeing any of them, but it's just like it was good that they didn't. It wasn't just like a cameo fest. You know, there was a few in there, and that was fine. But it was just like, again, it was just like it just felt like another Indiana Jones adventure. They didn't have to bring everybody back. It was like I think having any of those people come back would have felt like Billy D. Williams like showing up in episode
Yes,
9 of Star Wars. We were just like, why? Like, why would you be here right now? Like that doesn't make any sense. Indiana
exactly.
Jones has never really been a like has not had a supporting cast that really follows him throughout the movies for the most part. Like it's usually a pretty new cast in every single one. And so I like that. I liked him ending with Marion. I thought it put a little bow on it, but yeah, it didn't have this huge sense of finality to it that a lot of these movies do.
Yeah, I would agree. I was thinking like just some of the scenes also when you were talking about, it's not very played up, the remembering like, hey, Indiana Jones did this. There's very few lines. I think at one point he mentions the blood of Kali, so that's a Temple of Doom callback. You get the bug sing, which is also a Temple of Doom throwback to when I forget who the female is in that, the female lead, but she had to go through the bugs in Temple of Doom. They do the bugs in this. And Sala shows up, which is probably the other biggest throwback besides Marion Ravenwood, is he's in it very little. Again, not doing a throwback. But you also get the sense of them doing this again where you're propping up the second, I forget her name too now. I'm forgetting everybody's name. She's played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, but his goddaughter. You're kind of propping her up to be the new Indiana Jones throughout the whole movie, it feels like. But then at the end, there isn't that big, she's going to carry on the mantle and continue it, which obviously Hollywood, if this makes money, they're going to want to keep it going. Indiana Jones is a huge saga. It just feels weird that they don't do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I kind of like you said, they set it up, but they didn't have like this big like literal handing of the torch at the end of the movie. Which is like great. So it was like, look, she's kind of set up for it. If they want to do it, they can do it. If not, it doesn't feel like it was left open ended, like they did with Crystal Skull. You're like, oh, Shia LaBeouf's going to be Indiana Jones now, and then it didn't happen. So people learned their mistake there. And it also seems like this like movie is like not doing well at the box office too. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
I think it's getting a bad rap because the reviews are coming out, and I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. You can watch, it's watchable. I would say it's okay. Again, just like you, better than I thought it would be. I thought this was going to be a travesty because I feel like we have to touch on this. I want to hear what you thought because it bugged the hell out of me. Why did they make the first 30 minutes from the trailer? It looked like the de-aging stuff was going to be minor. There is an incredibly long section in this movie where it is a digitally de-aged Harrison Ford. And it's not bad. It's not as bad as Tarkin in Rogue One. I wouldn't say it's as good as like some of the Paul Walker stuff in Fast and Furious 7. But when you put him next to other actors, it's weird. And also, I don't know why, but they made his voice old Harrison Ford instead of trying to do the younger one. And that is really odd, I thought.
Yeah, that was my thing. It's like, okay, if you want to do this big long sequence at the beginning, like, you always see Indiana Jones getting dropped into something at the beginning of the movie. That's fine. Yeah. Like, it didn't go on for a very long time. It didn't need to go on for that long. Like, basically, for him to like steal something and have it stolen back from him, and that's really all that happened. But yeah, the voice was baffling. Like, he had so much rough to his voice, and it's like he didn't sound like that in Temple of Doom and Raiders. And it's like, why not de-age that? Yeah, I don't know. That was really curious.
It's interesting too because they do 2 flashbacks, and the second flashback is done much better because it's only about 10 years ago. So the de-aging looks great and the voice makes sense. But canonically, if you think about this takes place near Raiders and Crusade. So in that time frame, the Nazis, this is right in World War II. Right. And he's got modern day old man Harrison Ford, and it was weird. I also thought it was weird. Mads Mikkelsen's de-age looks better. And the voice isn't changed, which makes more sense because Mads Mikkelsen doesn't, in my opinion, look that much older in the 1969 time period. His hair's whiter, but facial wise, he doesn't look that different. Why the villain's de-age is better than your main character, who is the lead of these franchises, it's just weird. And like you're saying, too long. They could have started on the train. You didn't need all that stuff in the clock tower with him getting choked, and then he's driving the car disguised as a Nazi. Then he's sneaking through the train disguised as a Nazi. You know, I felt like it was just dwelled on too long. And again, I know we talked about this when we saw the trailer for this and discussed that in here, but James Mangold directing, odd choice in my opinion. You know, he does the Walk the Line. I forgot that singer's name, Johnny Cash. He does that documentary in 2005. Then he does Ford v Ferrari, one of my favorite movies. I've rewatched that recently. I love that movie. 2019. He also did Logan in 2017, one of my favorite comic book movies. And then just going into this, and it doesn't feel like he's carrying over that dourness from Logan or that almost faux documentary film telling of Ford v Ferrari to make just a substandard Indiana Jones movie. It's kind of weird in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, yeah, it would have been like crazy to see like an Indiana Jones movie that like felt like Logan. But yeah, you're making an Indiana Jones movie, right? And like I think whenever it works, it worked so well. It's just that like it was really stop and go for me whenever it was working and wasn't working. But whenever it was on, like it felt like Indiana Jones and it felt great. It's just like it doesn't feel like that for the full 2 hours and 10 minutes or however long it is. 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's especially, that runtime on this is really long. I was feeling it at the end. Now, I do love the ending when they go back in time. That is awesome. I love seeing the Nazis shoot at Roman soldiers from the airplane. But going back to what I was saying earlier, where they shoot him, and then they're like in the chest. This isn't a flesh wound. He gets shot in somewhere that would do damage, and then there's like 40 minutes of movie left. It was like halfway through that time, I'm like, didn't he get shot? Like, what is going on? I definitely feel like that runtime could be cut down a decent amount, especially if you eliminate a lot of that stuff in the beginning. But I didn't hate this movie. I think I would probably give it a 6.5 out of 10 on a scale. What about you?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like a 3 out of 5. Like it's just like a perfect, like pretty good movie. Like, yep, you're gonna see it at the theaters. You're gonna have a good time. You're probably not gonna think about it a whole lot more after that.
No.
But yeah, ends the saga on a little bit of a nicer note than the Crystal Skull.
100%. And then jumping into our next review, of course, we are continuing the Mission Impossible series. We are getting extremely close. I cannot tell you, especially being on vacation, not looking at my phone a lot, getting back, looking at my phone, seeing that my tickets for Mission Impossible, the new one, are in 6 days, kind of got me excited and really hooked on this. We are getting damn close to this premiere. And of course, number 5, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. We are getting our first introduction to Christopher McQuarrie directing as he kind of takes over the series. Definitely going to go into some spoilers here. So once again, if you want to skip ahead, watch time stamp on screen here. But what did you think of Rogue Nation, especially coming from Ghost Protocol?
I had a good time with it. It definitely feels different. It feels bigger, I guess. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. Ghost Protocol, it still kind of had that grit a little bit that Mission Impossible 3 did. And this felt a little glossier, a little cleaner. I don't know what adjective I want to use to describe this exactly. But it moves fast, and it moves so fast. This felt like the most summer blockbustery of all the movies so far, if that tracks. Like everything else was like really spy mystery, and while that's still this really felt like it was made to watch in a theater with a bucket of popcorn.
Oh yeah, 100%. The flow, I mean, it speeds through everything. Obviously, I want to get into what I feel is the best opening of any of them. The opening to this, good God. I love it just because of the practical stunt in there. Him hanging on the side of that airplane is baffling that they did that. But I think it's great from the Benji coming up in the tall grass. You get the whole team. You get Luther, Brandt, Benji. And then Ethan reveal as he jumps onto that C-17 is incredible, leading on to that takeoff scene. What did you think of that?
So I was gonna say the exact opposite. I was gonna say I really disliked the intro to this one. I don't know if I
Really?
disliked it, but it was not my favorite. It just felt like goofy, and I don't know. I wasn't about it.
Okay. I can see that. I know leading up to this, the big sell was obviously going on the C-17, that giant plane. That was like played in the trailers, and it was a real shock at the time to have that right at the beginning. I felt like it was a good opening. It sets up this chemical weapon that is being sent to the syndicate, which then
Yep.
I think the scene after that where Ethan goes into the record shop is another great setup. It really, for the first time,
That
I
I
feel,
agree with.
puts the
Yep.
bad guy in front of Ethan. He's on the back foot, immediately captured, which we don't see a lot in these movies.
Yeah, that was tight. And then yeah, just him like playing the missions briefing with on vinyl is just like so cool. Like
Yeah.
that's just cool as hell. And then
Yeah.
obviously it's like even more incredible whenever you think that the syndicate like fabricated it, and like the fact that like the syndicate would take the time to like make a vinyl record that like says, "Hey, we're the syndicate," like so cool.
Like, yeah, laughing in his face almost.
Totally.
And then it obviously moves into, we get, again, I want to know what you think about this because it's very much similar to the last movie. The last movie, the IMF got dissolved. And this one, it's almost the same
Yes.
thing as they're on
Yep.
trial. The CIA starts bringing in their assets almost. Feels like kind of a retread of the last movie, but at the same
Mhm.
time, I think it's different enough that I didn't mind it too much.
Yeah, that was one of my things too, because it's like I've said it on this podcast multiple times. Mission Impossible is the best whenever Ethan Hunt has his back against the wall and he's the only one who can do the thing, right?
Yeah.
But like, dude, how many times does this dude have to prove himself to the United States
Yes.
of America before? I mean, like every movie they're trying to crucify this guy as some kind of terrorist, and then he proves himself. They're like, then some other jackwagon in the U.S. government comes up and is like, "Nah, that Ethan Hunt definitely a terrorist this time." It's like, dude, let the guy go. So yeah, I did feel like a bit of a retread, but I think the movie moves fast enough through everything where you can't get too caught up on anything, which is
Yeah.
really works in its favor. Because I think if you think about any of it for too long, it kind of falls apart. But it blows past everything quick enough to where it's not too big of an issue.
Yes. And not to get too much in a spoiler for next week's movie, but you are going to see Ethan Hunt once again branded a terrorist. I wish, trust me, I wish they would get away from that because I think the only movie where he is not branded a terrorist is the second one. And it's kind
Right.
of ridiculous. But, if you can get past that, it is a lot of fun as well. I wanted you to know what you thought about Ilsa Faust being introduced as Rebecca Ferguson in this because she comes back in the next movie and the new one coming out. And I also want to know if you were ever fooled or your feeling if you thought she was working with Lane, if you really thought she was working for British intelligence and trying to help Ethan Hunt. Where do you stand on all that?
I liked her a lot. I thought she was great. Great addition to the series. Glad to hear she's going to be back in the rest of them. Liked her a lot. I definitely, yeah, I thought she was all in on Ethan's side whenever they went in and they stole the disc. Like after they did the whole water thing, I was like, okay, she's like one of them for real now. And then obviously, then she like betrays him again, and they do the whole motorbike sequence and the whole chase sequence. So yeah, I would say out of all the twists in that one, she kind of kept me guessing a little bit.
Yes. Okay. And you touched on it briefly there. What did you think of the water scene? Because
That was so good. That was so
even to
good.
this day, watching that, there's still suspense. I think the worst way to die would be drowning. So
Yeah.
any scene that's got a drowning aspect to it, I'm
Oh my
always
God.
edge of my seat. But good God, is that a good sequence?
That's so good. Like maybe like one of the best sequences in the series for sure. Like maybe the best.
Yes.
Like I was watching it and I was like I didn't even realize it. I was like holding on to the edge of my bed and like didn't even realize it, and then my hand kind of slipped like as Ethan was like maneuvering with like one of the mechanisms, and I like my heart like dropped at first thinking that like I had like messed it up somehow. Like that's how much it draws you in to the sequence. It like that was so funny. But even whenever he like passes out, you're like your heart drops and like he's gonna be fine, but still you're like fuck. Like it's so good. It's so good.
Yes, 100%. And then also in that sequence, unfortunately, Benji almost gets to wear his mask. He's wanted to this whole series, and he does not get to do it. You see him in the mask in the
Like in the
planing
vision,
out,
yeah.
and then they're like, "Oh, that won't work," and he doesn't get to wear it. unfortunately. Love that addition, though. Also,
Yes.
love the idea in this movie of pairing up the aspects of the team into duos. You get Ethan Hunt and Benji, which I love their dynamic in this. They work great off each other. I
Same.
love Simon Pegg as an actor. You also get Luther and Brant on their own kind of side quest mission, and I thought they worked well too. I love them meeting up in Casablanca during that motorcycle chase. I thought that was great.
Yes, I think you're right. I think yeah, Simon Pegg and Tom Cruise really steal the show. But yeah, it was kind of fun having them in like in little teams, and then Rebecca Ferguson's kind of running around and bouncing in and out, and Alec Baldwin's on everybody's case. Yeah, that was good stuff.
Yes, Alec Baldwin making his appearance in here is hilarious as a CIA guy trying to take over. And we talked about it last week. You know, last week was the first time in these movies where we get the nuclear threat in Mission Impossible. And we move away with it here. And I really like the thought or idea of basically an anti-IMF. They even say that, where they're so secretive. They're recruiting these presumed dead or MIA agents to where no one would even look for them. And I thought that was a great foil, especially Solomon Lane. Not as good as Philip Seymour Hoffman. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman is the best villain by far, but really good. I think a good number 2.
Yes, I had the exact same thought with you there that yeah, he's right below Philip Seymour Hoffman for me, as we said, in a series that kind of lacks in its villain characters. But I also agree that the Syndicate, like just having a match the IMF was so nice, because in every other movie you always feel like Ethan, the IMF are like, they are the top dog, right? Like, even as impossible as the mission may be, like they know more than their enemies, and so having Ethan basically kind of get beat at almost every single turn, I thought that was, yeah, it was a really great way to up the stakes in a way that like the Fast and Furious movies like don't do, right? They're always like, well, how can we just have like a bigger explosion or like put things in space, right? Like, no, that's not how you like escalate. Like, you need to have like a villain like more worth your match intellectually, not just of like physical danger.
Yeah, especially in this, getting the sense too where Ethan is almost like paranoid at the end. He's like, that's exactly what Lane wants us to do if that's what we think we should do. And then they even bring up the line like, do you think what this is about? Do you this is just about me trying to beat the guy that's beat me at every corner? Love putting him in a box similar to how he did at the beginning of the movie with Ethan. Thought that was a great twist. And then I want to know what you thought about the twist with Chief Atlee and Brant. Did you think Brant was really turning against Ethan to bring in the CIA Huntley to help? And then obviously the Atlee mask reveal. I wanted to hear what you thought about that, since that is the patented Mission Impossible Max twist.
Well, I was waiting for a mass twist to come, so I kind of had my thumb on that. At first, I did think that Brant was turning him in, and then kind of clued into what was going on as they got deeper into the whole thing. At first, I thought that Ethan was the prime minister at first. Okay. I didn't realize that he was the British guy. But I knew whenever all that was going down, I was like, oh, this is where the mass thing comes up, especially whenever Alec Baldwin was doing his whole speech about, like, Ethan is, the smartest and he's no security measure can hold him and blah, blah, blah. Like, really talking him up, just making that bit, really hyping up that intro for him to rip that mask off. But still, like, great moment. Like, it's coming, but it still works every time.
Yeah, they know what they're good at and they deliver on it. Definitely. And then that final showdown where Ethan finally does flip it around, and you get the sense that he's not only trying to beat him, but might actually have him when he does, or so we think, put all of the money into his own head, gets rid of the disc, makes it so that he can't be killed. He's got to be captured. Really enjoyed that kind of final sequence, especially seeing the Heavy in this, the Bone Doctor, kind of show up. He gets a lot more to talk than any of the other heavies. I know we had last week, you had the main bad guy, and then you had Wistrom as his second kind of guy, barely had any lines. And then the other movies have also had those kind of smaller roles, but this one definitely gave him a little bit more to shine.
Yeah, and just giving him a name, I think, helps so much, right? Like, even if he even had less to say, like, just having, like, another character in there with, like, a name like the Bone Crusher, like, that's just, it's just cool. Like, it just adds a little more spice to the mix. Definitely.
And then wanted to hear your thoughts on the ending. Obviously, you get a hilarious, somewhat funny scene where they go back and the CIA has to be like, oh, this was all an operation because the IMF are in it. You get Brandt's funny lines that he can't confirm or deny at the secretary's approval. And then we get Alec Baldwin becoming the secretary of the IMF. He, of course, returns in the next movie as well. What did you think about that?
Yeah, that was like crazy. Again, because it's just like, man, like how many times are we going to do this? Like how many times do the IMF have to like prove their worth before they're like in it for good? But yeah, I thought that was the movie like pretty perfectly like bookends itself with Ethan being in the cage at the beginning and then going to the courtroom and then the other way around with what's his name, the bad guy
Yep.
is in the cage in the glass box, and then then the back of the courtroom and everything's flipped around. So I really like whenever there's kind of that like circular storytelling. So
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely excited to see the next one. Unfortunately, this is Jeremy Renner's last appearance in this. He got big into Marvel, so he does not show up in the next one or the new one. Honestly, the one character that I would love to see come back. I think he brings a lot to the role.
Yeah, he works so well.
He works so well with the team. You really get the sense of him and Luther, especially in this working together. They start off when Luther's like, I don't know you. All I know is you chose to work for Hunley. And then at the end, they are a cohesive team. Really sad to see him go. But out of 10, Reese, what would you give this movie?
I was like really, because I knew you were going to ask. I was like really rolling around with that. I don't know what the highest I've given yet is. I feel like I would say I think it's like it's a 7.5 or an 8.
Yeah, I would say 7.5. I think we gave Ghost Protocol an 8, so 7.5. I definitely think this is up there. When we do our list at next week, because we're going to be wrapping up next week with the final one, we'll do our list for these movies. I'm really going to have to think about it of what I want to give that movie. That's going to be a tough rating.
I agree. I know.
Definitely.
I got to start working my list too, because everything's kind of running together. I'm going to have to like go back through and like really refresh myself on everything. Watching one a week has been, it all just kind of blends together. But yeah, I'm excited to try to see where it all shakes out at.
Yeah, Fallout next week. I definitely think it's great. I think you will enjoy it. Hopefully you'll enjoy it as we're getting ready for the new one. But now jumping over into movie reviews, again, not too much this week, but starting off with Driveway Dolls. Now, I saw this trailer at the theater, and I've got to say, this one's got my interest. I love a Coen Brothers movie. This is only one of them, but definitely interesting trailer to say.
Yeah, I can't like quite like pinpoint the tone of this one.
Yes.
But it seems like it's going to be up my alley. I like these little quirky, goofy crime movies where some like average people stumble upon something that they shouldn't find. Get thrust into this big adventure, and you've got all these professionals kind of on their tail, and what happens. And so, I think like that's just a type of movie that's like hard to miss on. Like it's also hard to like do really, really well. But it seems like this will be like a pretty fine movie to like go see.
Yeah. Again, just thinking about that as you said it, a movie where somebody stumbles into something and they have to deal with that. That is No Country for Old Men, one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah,
another Coen movie. Would
that's
love
how you do it good. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the perfect example of that. With the Ethan Coen directing and writing, I think you do great. Love the cast. Matt Damon and Pedro Pascal in this, though, really, surprised me, threw me for a loop. Based on the trailer, it does not look like they're going to be in it long, which is a shame. I would love to see them take a big part in this, but interesting to have them. I think they're great actors. I love to see what they do with the roles.
Yeah, and that's why I'm excited to see it, because like you said, it's Ethan Coen. He is directing it by himself, and it just seems not like a Coen movie. And so it's kind of where I'm a little bit perplexed by it. But I'm very intrigued. I think it'll be good. I think Miley Cyrus is supposed to be in it. Yeah, so, and then obviously you said Pedro and Matt Damon are going to be in it as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be hard to miss on. And then Beanie Feldstein is in it, and she was in Booksmart and Lady Bird. So yeah, it's set up to be a good one. We'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, definitely we'll be checking this one out. Hopefully good reviews only increase my hype for it, because don't know if I'm extremely hyped for it, but some good reviews could definitely put me up there. But going into the next movie is going to be Priscilla, which is going to be based off of Elvis's daughter. And it's directed by Sofia Coppola. I don't, it is A24. I love me some A24. I don't know what to think of this one, to be honest.
Well, Sofia Coppola is like probably my favorite director. Like Sofia Coppola and Sean Baker
Okay.
are my two favorite directors. So like I am jacked for a new Sofia Coppola movie. Trailer looks, it has all the writings of a Sofia Coppola movie. So I think she's gonna hit us with a banger for sure. So I'm jacked for it.
Yeah, I like Lost in Translation. I don't know if I've seen a lot of her other stuff. But I wanted to ask if you thought this was weird. Now, I don't know a lot about Priscilla Presley or much of Elvis Presley either, besides the movie that came out. I think it was last year or 2 years ago. It just seems, I don't know if there's enough story to put into this. And it also just seems weird to get the Priscilla movie right after the Elvis movie almost. And I've got to say, Elvis does appear to show up in this. And
Yeah.
I think Austin Butler obviously looks better. They didn't get him for this, but just an interesting look.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think I'm really excited for it. But having Elvis is going to be in it, yes, because I like this. Elvis and Priscilla's story is so crazy, and so to get to see it because it's based off of Priscilla's autobiography, I believe, and so I'm very anxious to see it all from her point of view because obviously that's a very contentious story and how it all went down. So
Yeah, would be interesting to contrast it with the Elvis movie. I know she wasn't in it a lot, but it'd be interesting to see where their stories vary almost.
yeah, and I mean, like, I wasn't huge on Elvis anyway, and so getting to see Sophia's kind of take on the whole thing, I'm very excited for. I think if anybody was going to make this movie, like she's the obvious pick. So I think it's going to look gorgeous. It's going to be, you're going to have plenty of shots of Priscilla looking out the window of a car.
Yes.
The set design is going to be great. I'm jacked.
Now let's transition to a movie that might not be as good or have you as jacked about. Liam Neeson's coming back with Retribution. And I've got to say, how many times can this guy be trapped in a vehicle and it is made into a movie?
Yeah, I was like kind of out whenever I just first started. I was like, "Oh, come on!" But then I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be fun. Like, it's gonna be a good time. You're gonna watch it. You're gonna forget about it a week later." But
Yeah.
Liam Neeson, up against the wall. It's like Speed, basically, right? Like in the bus,
Yes.
you got
I
to
was
keep it
getting
above a certain
Speed vibes from
miles per hour. People can't get out of the seats, and they're making him do all this crazy stuff. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's like I'm like it feels like a video game mission or something. It feels like one mission out of GTA. There's like making
Yeah.
a movie, but it's like it's like that's fine. Sure, I'll go watch.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we get Nonstop, which is him on a plane. We get Commuter, which is him on a train. Retribution is him in a car. It could be fun. I will say I laughed multiple times in the trailer, and that is not because the trailer is supposed to be funny. There was some baffling line deliveries that were not good, and there are some very funny scenes. If it gets terrible reviews, I'm definitely going to see it because I would love a good bad movie. If it gets great reviews, I will definitely go see it because I would love Liam Neeson to come back in the fold. Obviously, Taken was huge for him. Love Schindler's List. Love, even though they're bad, the Star Wars prequels. Him as Qui-Gon is fun. It's great. But yeah, I would love to see this do well. I don't know if it will, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's gonna like do well. It's not gonna be anything new, but like, when's it supposed to come out? It's like, is it in the next
August this year.
August of this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be like a fine thing to go do on a Tuesday night.
Yeah. Coming out in August is a good idea. July is absolutely loaded with movies,
Yeah.
so pushing that back, always a good idea. But yeah, we'll have to see what comes of this one. Hopefully something good, but never know. That is going to be the end of this episode, though. Again, a much shorter one. As always, I would like to thank Reese for being with me.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Excited to, I guess, not quite round out Mission Impossible next week, but round out everything before we, catch up, I should say.
The culmination of 6 weeks will be coming next week. I'm going to try to get a loaded podcast for us, make up for the 10th being the double digit. We'll have the real celebration next week. But yeah, looking forward to next week. Hopefully we'll have a lot to talk about. Thank you once again. If you have anything to add to the discussion, please drop it in the comments below. Love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. If you want to keep up to date with this content, please consider subscribing. As always, I will see you guys next week.
Peace out.